In this new Todd Howard interview, Todd actually speaks about the settlement systems and how you can funnel resources from different planets into your main settlement and use it as some kind of economy generator. Talks about other mechanics on the game, like the skill systems. The biggest thing for me, though, was when he talked about gravity bending. I'm going to timestamp everything below, but gravity bending is the little sort of power we saw at the end of the Starfield showcase, where you lifted your hand and everyone kind of went flying. He also elaborates on crew and playing the game solo and lots of other things. So I'm super excited for this interview. Xcast did a really cool job asking loads of community questions.
We really got to go 45 minutes in depth with your team looking at this awesome brand new game, and you guys absolutely crushed it. So congratulations to you guys. That was really, really cool. But I want to talk about, how do you build something like that with a direct? I know your games are so big and there's so much to do, and it's probably easy to talk about that, but how do you refine that into a tight 45 minutes where we are captured, we aren't lingering on something too long, and maybe you cut things out? What is that process like for you and the team?
You know, it takes a lot of time. We've been fortunate enough to be able to give a lot of cool demos over the years going back. Fallout 4 was always a highlight for us to do that. We did a decent-sized Starfield demo last year at, I'll say, E3, the Xbox showcase. And I think at that time, maybe it was 12, 13 minutes for Starfield at the end. That had been the longest demo that Xbox had shown and got a great response. Going into it this year, we knew, hey, we want to give everybody a really deep dive look at the game and what's the best way to do that. And so we're really fortunate, I think, to have that opportunity to do that kind of following the Xbox showcase with...
It was crucial that Xbox gave them that 45-minute window for that massive showcase, and I think we saw on social media how people reacted to it. Everyone suddenly had this renewed confidence in what Starfield actually was.
And the response really was incredible. Hearing so many people and the feedback, everybody kind of rooting for us and loving what we've shown. You never know, right? We're heads down here in the studio, and it had been a while since we had really come out with that much stuff. You never know how people are going to react. It's a new IP. It's incredibly ambitious. We're taking a lot of risks. So really happy with the response. It's a lot of fuel to us here. I will say the thing that actually makes me most proud of it is by doing it in that format, we could highlight a lot of people on the team that fans don't know or haven't seen before. And look, there are hundreds more that we couldn't show in it, and sort of their passion for the project. They have all put so much into this game, and we just hope people love it as much as we do.
Hearing all the passion that the developers had poured into it really renewed my confidence in just how excited I was for the game.
First question I'm going to ask Todd, and I'll take it from the direct, just how I felt in the moment. Again, it was an incredible presentation. And the thing that I saw in that direct, because there's just so much information. There was just such a data dump that you had of things that Starfield is going to be able to do. But the kind of fun thing that I want to ask you, which can lead into a bigger discussion, is at one point, you were basically a space pirate. You could board a ship, you could take the ship, you could take everything you want on there, all the sandwiches, all those fun things. But it kind of leads into, outside of the main story, the discovery, the exploration that you're going to be able to do in Starfield. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
The in-between.
Sure. I think if you look at all of our games, that kind of feeling is what we want, where you can look at the scope of the game and the sort of palette of things and menu of things you could do, and then say, what if? And then I'm going to go do these things. And I think that idea of being a space pirate, there's a whole faction for it, by the way, with the Crimson Fleet, or being a smuggler, or having contraband and shielded cargo, or taking over things. Those are all things that we think about as well, and we want to find the best ways to enable that while it not feeling separate, while it fitting in part of the game itself.
I don't think we knew about shielded cargo, because obviously when you go to some planets, your cargo hold will actually be scanned for contraband goods. But shielding your cargo hold against those scans is pretty interesting. But also, obviously, it being a Bethesda game, I love the idea that you have the Thieves Guild in Skyrim. Here you've got a whole pirate-based guild that's all about smuggling, and I'm sure we can go and do that quest line and then become the master of that guild.
You see that in the video, I think, when you arrive at Jemison, where They actually do a contraband scan that you pass in that case. So a lot of really cool systems, and we do so many of them. I think what we really work on is how do all those systems come together and collide and create some really, really cool moments where the players, yourselves, have that agency to go really do what you want to do in the game.
One of my favorite things I heard Todd Howard say in another interview, he landed on a planet, got a random encounter of being attacked by some enemies, and then he jumped onto their ship, started killing them, and then they took off into outer space again. So obviously now he's in space, he has to kill these guys, re-land, and obviously get his ship and his cargo back. And he didn't realize that was something that could happen in the game. When he talks about all these different systems that they've made coming together, that's the thing that excites me about it, how it surprises you.
There's going to be a lot to do in this game, and I'm looking forward to that, Todd. Really exciting stuff. You talk about all of the different systems at play and how big this is and the player freedom. I do want to jump in right away because we got over 1,000 community questions written in. They were very excited that you're going to be on this show, and people really wanted to talk with you about some of this stuff. Of course, a big one that Xbox has been pushing on the Xcast side of things is accessibility. And of course, you and your team have been doing this for many of years. You've worked on these settings. Xbox, it's a big drive for them right now, is the accessibility program and making sure everyone can play around the globe. You talk about players first. What is it like creating a game that's so big and has so many systems and also mixing in accessibility settings? Is there something that stands out to you this time around?
Well, first, I think Xbox has done an incredible job there with everything they've done with accessibility and their controller in particular. You asked, one thing that we're really leaning in on with this game is having a large font mode, which really is important in an RPG where there's a lot of stuff to read. So it comes into play with, obviously, for accessibility, but also various monitor sizes. I'm noticing that that's really helpful when I play. There's a lot more handheld devices coming out where you can stream these games or sometimes even play them natively, and it really helps us there as well. So that's one in particular that we're leaning in on.
That's sweet. That's sweet. And you talk about handheld. Can you share with us, is it Steamdeck compatible? Is that something you focused on, or is that something we share later down on the road?
We'll talk about that later down the road. Yeah.
I guess it is.
Let's jump back into the fun, though, because there's a lot of cool stuff, Gary. And I want to get into being a space pirate, but I want to talk about the first steps, creating the character. You guys have now pushed backgrounds and traits into the fold of things. And, of course, we've had the stars before in Elder Scrolls. What is it like now putting traits and backgrounds? What are some of your favorites, and what kind of uniqueness did you be able to bring into that?
Yeah, I think for us, we've done a number of games, obviously, over the decades that have various character systems. And I think we've learned a lot in terms of how does it feel when you start a game? What are those first choices like before you understand what the actual rules of the game are? That's always a trick to get right. And then how much depth does it have if you're playing for 20 hours or 50 hours?
This is really important because obviously there's some RPGs where people will come to my channel and they'll watch like a build guide of how they should play the game without actually going, a lot of people will do this, without actually going and experiencing it themselves. Because they're terrified that they'll make a mistake and then they'll have to re-roll their character or start again because they didn't min-max it and it kind of just didn't work out later in the game when they felt a bit weak in certain areas. So I can totally get the issue behind this. Todd Howard, though, doesn't really want to pigeonhole you into doing one specific thing too quickly. But yet you still need the system to be interesting enough that if you've been playing for 100 hours, that you can just repeatedly play the same game.
Playing for 20 hours or 50 hours or 100 hours or 500 hours. And so I think we've hit a real sweet spot with Starfield with giving you that flavor right out of the gate, where you are going to pick some starting skills with your background, but that also has flavor. People want to role play. They don't want to just see it as a list of numbers. You know, I'm a chef. Okay, what can a chef do? How does that factor into dialogue or other choices in the game? And then, so that's the backgrounds and the traits. It's a little bit of a original fallback, throwback to that, to Fallout, excuse me, and then say, these are optional. They come with positives, they come with negatives, and you saw some of that in the direct with the Adoring Fan and some other ones. The Parents is a really, really great one that we all love. So it lets you, if you're going to start over even, play the game in a different way.
I did like that there was actual meaning behind some of those traits that we saw, with the adoring fan literally being an entire follower you get by choosing a trait. And then the parents one adds 2 parents into the game that you can go and visit. Like, we're talking actual characters that you can miss engaging with depending on the starting traits you choose. But also the commitment isn't so big that you feel bad for choosing the wrong starting trait.
Can I follow up on that really quick? Just staying along those lines of the skill tree, there's also the ranking system in there as well. Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit too?
It's like full
Yeah,
out.
sure. Those, and what we've given ourselves there is a lot of flexibility to the player. First, we have the visual, right? I actually love these badges that can go on a spacesuit and how they unlock. And then they're tiered. So as opposed to being a strict kind of tree you have to go down, you can say, I want to focus in technology, and then the different tiers of skills will open up, and it gives you flexibility within that. There's 5 of them. You saw that in the direct. And we are finding here, what you always want is when people are talking about the game, that they're saying, did you know you can do this? Or they're comparing characters, and those character builds and those stories feel very, very unique for each person in that conversation.
So right now you can say it's at rank 2, and the way you level it up is very immersive. Like, you just have to pick another 15 locks, and then you can unlock rank 3 and so on. So it's a bit like Skyrim leveling, but probably less grindy in that you're just doing the thing you want to do to improve that skill.
I guess I should get Jez Corden's stupid question out of the way. I said I would ask it, so Todd, just so you understand the background here, when we tweeted out that you were going to be on the show, Jez Corden, our friend from Windows Central, responded and said, oh, will you ask Todd this particular question? And Paris just flat out just said, I'm not asking him that. So then he DMs me. I don't know, he thinks I'm an easier mark or whatever. It wasn't his first choice, but maybe an easier mark. It's actually not that stupid a question. It's a big open world game. Todd, is there any form of space fishing? Is there any kind of fishing activity that you can do? Because in open world games, that is quite common. And in fact, it's maybe not that stupid a question, because if you know anything about exoplanetary, the search for life, scientists will tell you that the best chance of finding life in the near future is little alien fishies and squids on the under the ice of.
It's not a bad question, because they added it in Skyrim, and there's an entire quest line for it.
Europa. And in fact, recently we just discovered that one of the key chemical building blocks to construct organic life might be present on one of the moons of Saturn.
It is random.
So I put it to you, Todd. Fishing or no fishing?
Well, it depends on your definition of fishing. So is it collecting fish, killing fish? Or is it specific to having
Is there some kind of rod that I can put into a lake and pull out an alien fish and then sell it or cook it or something?
That is one thing we do not have.
Okay. Expansion, though. There's going to be expansion.
You never know.
Jez Corden,
There's going to be DLC. I told you, Jez, this is on you. The interview's gone bad now, and it's down to him.
I like that.
Let me try and salvage
I'm excited to
this.
say no to things.
Yeah, it's hard to say
I'm
no.
smart. I'm really here to lower expectations on
Yeah. And me also.
He's trying to pull it all in, is right.
They're a little high. They're a little.
Well, let me try and salvage this and turn it in another direction, which I think can lead to an interesting conversation. So the 1,000+ planets. If there's been any concern that I've heard recently about Starfield, it's been about handcrafted versus procedural. So obviously with 1,000+ planets, a lot of it's going to be procedural. And you even talked.
The way it works is you go to a planet. The planet is procedurally generated using different tiles, kind of like a lot of Bethesda games have done with their landscapes. And then the locations themselves that you'll discover are randomly placed, but the locations are handcrafted. So for example, think of a location in Fallout 4, Fallout 3, or Skyrim. That location could just be planted randomly on any planet that you happen to visit. And because it's random, that means you might discover locations on one planet, your friend might go to that planet, and then they'll discover different locations because it's randomly generated. But the locations themselves have handcrafted quests and things going on around them. However, the quest we saw in the demo was like, here's some local wildlife that's annoying me, go and kill it. And that was it. So I don't know if it gets more in depth than that.
In the direct about there will be kind of breadcrumbs along the way with handcrafted things that you'll be able to do as you discover these planets. But my question is, I take it back to something like Mass Effect. I remember when that came out, super excited. You could go to all these different planets, and ultimately there wasn't a lot to do on the vast majority of them. So with Starfield, when we think about these 1,000+ planets, of course, we want to go out and explore the galaxy. We want to see all of these things. But when I get to these procedural planets, is there really going to be things there to do that are worth my time? Other than maybe there's a resource here or there, is it all just handcrafted, or will there be procedural things that we could discover on these planets as well?
I think that's, the $1 million question as it comes to a game like this. It's a great question, one that we honestly struggled with early in the project. We wanted to do the planets because we like to give you that choice. Where do you want to go? You feel like you would want that choice in a game like this. And so first it was technically, could we pull it off? And, we did technically be able to, draw these planets, make them feel believable on the screen. Now, obviously, it's procedural. Okay, so there's no way we're going to go and handcraft an entire planet. What we do is we handcraft individual locations, and some of those are placed specifically, obviously the main cities and other quest locations. And then we have a suite of them that are generated or placed when you land, depending on that planet. Now, I'll also say for us, we view it as giving you, when you look at a system, here's the menu of things you could do. And like science, and we're pushing it, about 10% of those planets have life on them. Again, we're pushing it to the edge of what do people think, what planets are in that Goldilocks zone versus planets that have resources.
Right.
I think it is a moment when you land on some of these barren planets. And again, we will generate certain things for you to find on them. But if you look,
and those locations, by the way, are going to be highlighted on the planet, so you can just go there. You don't need to go and discover the location. You don't need to land on every planet to see if there's anything going on. Unless you want to.
Look at a planet, you see the resources, it has things you want. There is, I love the Buzz Aldrin quote, the magnificent desolation. I think there's a certain beauty to landing on those and feeling I'm one of the only people or the only person to ever visit this planet. So it's a difficult design thing. If you add too many things, if it's generating too many abandoned bases or towers or things to find, it starts feeling too gamey in some of those locations. So I think we've dialed that in pretty well, depending on the planet that you're on. And so we hope everybody enjoys it for what it is, but it is an exploration different than we've had, where you're landing, you're exploring around that landing spot, and then you're probably going somewhere else.
This actually brings me into one of my main concerns, which is I don't know how Starfield's going to feel. Like, if you're playing Skyrim or Fallout, right? Like, you jump into the game, you're running around this world, and you see things off in the distance, and you're like, oh, there's a castle there, I want to go and explore, and you got to, like, run through the forest, and there's, like, a little bandit camp hidden in the forest that you encounter it. It's the 30-second rule of seeing something in the distance and then wanting to go and explore that. It's kind of like a child in a sweet shop, but with Starfield, it's not like that, because you're constantly in this map interface and going between loading screens between space and planets. And I don't know if that's going to ruin the Bethesda exploration experience. It's going to be different. And I just want to know what that feels like. I really need to play it. And I really need to tell you guys what that feels like. Because I feel like that's going to like really make or break. I'm pretty sure I'm going to enjoy this game. But if I enjoy it like exploring other Bethesda games, that's the thing I want to find out.
But I think it's relevant here when we're talking about planets is, again, I've probably watched this direct like 1,000 times at this point. So one thing that I did notice was some planet biome diversity. You seem to highlight one planet where we did see different biomes on that particular planet. Now, I'm not expecting that on every planet, but this is something that you're conscious of, that you're doing in the game. And it leads me to two questions. I'm just thinking the size of some of these planets. Is there really going to be this giant map that we're going to be able to explore across different biomes and find obviously interesting things and resources and creatures? But the other part of this is, and this comes to more to just the diversity of the planets, when I think about gravity, temperature, radiation, things like this, are we going to have to prepare ourselves to actually be able to land on some of these planets and explore them? Or is it just going to be, if I can get to the planet, I can land and do whatever I need to do?
Good question.
There's a lot there, but I'll say, we have a lot of biomes. We do look at temperature, we look at the radiation, we look at all of those things on a planet so that your suit and your protection, you can get certain ailments if you're not ready, and certain weather things can come through with all of that. So
on Fallout 4, and they added it to Skyrim survival mode, and it was kind of like a more intense, hardcore version of the effects that not eating, freezing, and all these other things had on your character. And I saw these stats on the spacesuits that protect you against certain elemental effects, which I love. And I know there'll be a modder out there who makes a hardcore version, but I am interested to know how casual or hardcore it is. I feel like, because it's a Bethesda game, it's going to be more casual starting out.
There are obviously planets that might have one type of biome, and there are planets that have a whole bunch. And their creatures and the plants and everything go with the biome. So there's a whole part of the game where surveying a planet, like discovering all of the flora and fauna and resources. Planets also have traits, usually geological things that are inherent to that planet, and uncovering those. And if you fully survey a planet, that data is actually worth a lot of money, credits in the game that you can sell. So there's a whole part of the game that's really just doing that. It's a little more...
that's really cool, because I thought it was just kind of like, oh, you got some experience, you finished this planet, but obviously you've surveyed an entire planet. You can actually go and sell that data, which is really cool. It's those extra features and mechanics that I really am interested in learning more about.
Or I almost describe it Zen-like. It's in the game that you can sell. So there's a whole part of the game that's really just doing that. It's a little more, I almost describe it Zen-like. You can get on a planet where the creatures there, some of them can be aggressive, where it can get dangerous if you're exploring the planet. And you can watch the creatures. We've actually had a problem at times with the predator creatures going and killing all of the more peaceful creatures you're coming across.
No.
Why are they all dead? And then you realize there's something dangerous in the area. So I would say this, that we do everything that you mentioned, and we really try to mix it up and spend a lot of time balancing that. So it is fun minute to minute, but you also know what you're getting into.
Mate, first person to 100% survey every single one of those 1,000+ planets.
Todd, I want to talk about the plants and the creatures. I guess I'll start with the creatures really quick. Of course, some iconic Bethesda creatures, the Deathclaw, the dragons in Elder Scrolls. Is there going to be a special creature in this, or will there be so many that there's not just one that we all point to and say, oh, wow, that was the bad one?
I mean, there's a few bad. There's one really bad one. There's a few, but you have to play it.
Okay, I like that. And then
I'm glad he said that, because I kind of want. I think there's going to be like a dragon-like creature, for example. Like imagine if they just had like a giant like Dune sandworm, but it wasn't on a planet. It was just like flying through space, eating ships and stuff. And that was like the dragon version of Starfield that just kept you on your toes.
One of the most asked questions was, Todd, we land on these planets and people are blown away by the size and the scope of things. Is there a land vehicle or an option to maybe mount some of these wildlife creatures to use as a land transportation mode of transport?
We can ride them.
There is not. We do design it. I think when we've seen this with our other games where we want to design it so it feels good on foot, but we do have the boost pack. You saw some of that in the video. And you have skills for the boost pack. So the boost pack almost acts like this vehicle. It's super fun where you can fly through. And then the low gravity planets are just really, really something special in the game.
I wonder if there's high gravity planets where you just you're just constantly over encumbered, like every Bethesda game. I feel like with Bethesda, if they can't do something right and it's not going to feel good, they don't put it in the game. And I think vehicles was one of those things. I wouldn't be surprised to see a mod creator do this, though.
If I could pivot this into companions, question about that as far as companions, crew members, and some of the individual skills that they're going to have in the direct. It was clear that you'll have some crew members, you'll have some that you can station at an outpost. But I'm curious, even with that, will we have the option to just play the game solo without any companions or crew members, or is that going to be a necessity as we're playing through the game? And along those lines, crew members, or is that going to be a necessity as we're playing through the game? And along those lines, can crew members on their own, through our own decisions, decide, I don't want to do this anymore, and they leave?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, a few ones there.
Piper
the
companions
are awesome. Our team's done a really, really great job with them, and there's a lot of great depth there with the main companions. But we do support where, if you don't want to do that, there's traits that really make you, I want to play by myself. And then there's also skills that go into that give you special perks and bumps if you are solo. them leaving on their own, they can, depending on the choices you make, they can get angry with you.
Yeah.
And then the relationship that you have with the companion can change based on the decisions you're making in the game.
Okay, so the relationship can change, but they can't leave your service. It'd be quite funny to do a playthrough where everyone just absolutely hates your guts, but they just happen to stay along for the ride.
If I get mad at my companions, Todd, can I space them and take them and make them walk the plank on my spaceship?
You can leave them behind. You can tell them where to go. You can assign them. You can assign them to outposts. You can assign them to ships that you're not using and things like that.
I have a fun one coming in from the community. Courtney writes in and says, are the Constellation companions the only ones that are able to be romanced? A lot of people very excited about romancing NPCs. What is the breadth of that? Is there a wide range?
The 4 main Constellation ones are the ones that support full quest lines for them and romance.
Great.
Okay.
Also, I had another great one. Someone wrote in and said, could my crew on my ship be all robots? Is there a possibility of having enough robot companions / crew members to be an all robot starship?
Mods.
Technically, yes.
There might be another robot companion we don't know about. Now, on the romance side, I do want to add this. Instead of the romance like in Skyrim, where it's very surface level and you can just kind of marry almost everyone, I prefer it when romance is just done right. Now, I don't know if they have done it right or what right even looks like, but I'm excited to see what it is like. There's a very thin line between cringe and this is amazing.
It's so weird
Awesome.
the questions that people come up with.
Yeah.
Todd creates some special games.
I don't want to oversell. I mean, there's Vasco, and then there's a few other things, but
Okay.
not to
forward
the
to that.
extent of the humans, obviously.
Yeah.
I think one of the challenges of making a game like this is that when you say, oh, it's, a million planets and you can go do anything you want, that people are going to ask sometimes dumb questions like, well, can I go space fishing? And you realize that for every one thing that you can do in a game like this, there's still going to be 100 other things that you cannot do because we're not there yet. But
Well, look, that's what we do in the studio, right? When you're doing a game like this or the games that we have done, we ask all the same questions.
right.
And it's how do we say yes as much as possible? So actually, they're not like, should you fish? It took us a while. We finally added it to Skyrim, right? So
there's hope. There is hope for space fishing down the road.
Dude's getting attacked.
Role-playing games in general, that they're not defined by a certain feature set.
Right.
Todd, I want to talk about the music because I know music is very important to you and the team, and it's something you kind of base a lot of things off of. And we've seen music really get a lot of shine in the gaming industry over the past couple of years, which is all due and that deserved, right? I want to talk about how you build music into an open world game like yourself, right? Where maybe me and Gary never hit the same point. Or how do you make sure the music hits at that right perfect moment if I'm 30 steps the wrong direction, or maybe I never hear that kind of music? What is that like, creating music around such a big, freedom-driven open world game?
Well, actually, music is one of the first things that we start with when we make a game. We do concept art, and we start writing the music. I think the music for Starfield, the work that Inan Zur has done there is just incredible. It could be my favorite game music. And we did that very, very early. So when we're working on the game, we're looking at the concept art. The music is giving us all a feeling of what this world feels like, and what this experience feels like. How we do that in an open game is there is a whole system behind, like, what is happening, what's the mood right now, and then it is pulling from, a collection of tracks that fit that mood, and then segueing between them. And it might be easy to say, oh, you're just going to do this all the time, but the trick we find is actually when it has time to breathe, when the music actually kind of subsides for a bit, so that when it does come on and we're trying to hit a certain mood that you're in, it's impactful. I've also noticed, and happy to hear from all of you, but sometimes the music can come on and maybe it puts you in a mood. Like, oh, you're hearing this music and then you're like, oh, I think I'm feeling I should do the following now. And then it puts you in a certain mood that you weren't in before. So we get some of that sometimes, not intentional, but it's not a bad thing.
Since we're talking about audio, I guess I should ask the other question that we were talking about before the show. And this is will the game have this? We were talking about how much we love in-game radio stations, and Fallout obviously is one of the better examples of that. Is there any kind of space radio that we'll be able to listen to as we're exploring?
There is one, but it is pretty much local to a certain location. It's not something you can dial into when you're away, cool. But there is a little bit of that, I would say.
Cool. I love in-game radio.
We were talking about that, of course, the radio host. Todd, did you ever think to yourself, I would like to be the radio host for one of my video games. Put me behind the microphone. Let me go wild.
No, I don't think that's for me. And actually, the last DJ we had in Fallout 4 is Brendan Hunt, who everyone knows as Coach Beard on Ted Lasso.
That's amazing. I didn't know that. That's awesome. Yeah,
he's incredible in the game.
I mean, if you're ever looking to add like a wacky kind of morning zoo trio to the Starfield, radio universe, you know who to call.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah.
Space Bike Mike.
Anytime.
So this shit writes itself. I told you the creative process was easy. It's like falling off of a log.
So
it's easy.
Todd, to get it back onto Starfield directly, but to Todd, one question I had was about shipbuilding, and I'm trying to keep this limited. Also, the ships that you acquire. So obviously, we saw during the direct, you can build your own ships. You can let your imagination go wild. You mentioned in there that to reach the far reaches of the galaxy, you will have to upgrade your ship, along the way, which makes total sense. But me wanting to live out my space pirate fantasy in the game, if I'm acquiring certain ships, whether I purchase them or I quote unquote steal one, are those ships locked in at whatever quote unquote stats that they have at that time, or are they upgradable in ways as well?
Mate, the shipbuilding system is just like, you can literally go full ham, build whatever you want. It's just a skeletal base. Every ship you see in the game is built with this system. That's how it works.
They're all upgradable. They go through the same... We built those ships with the builder that you all saw in the direct. When you steal one, we do make you register it. If you want to modify it or use it in those ways, you have to spend credits to go register it. And that's for us to keep it from the economy kind of spiraling in those ways. You can fly it around, but if you want to mess with it, you register it.
That's interesting, because I was like, oh my god, it's going to be so easy to make money in this game, because you can just go out, steal enemy ships or even friendly ships, and then just go and sell them all. But obviously, you have to register it, so you have to pay to register the size or scale of the ship, what kind of features it has, and then you can use those components or even upgrade them. But I'm pretty sure there's going to be like a best ship that you can get early on method.
And then you go through that whole loop of upgrading it. I will say that that's a very deep system, and one that we expect for late game. It's not like you start the game and then you're going to get right into shipbuilding. It costs a lot of credits.
Yeah.
It is, in a good way, a very complicated system, and one that it was more of a longer term thing in the game. You can easily upgrade your ship, like just go in and say, I want to improve these weapons. I want to improve the grav drive or the shield.
Make it red, goes faster.
That's very, very easy to do. But where you go in that mode and you break it apart and you're building, that is a whole mode onto itself that is more of a long-term play kind of thing.
That actually leads me into, and this is more of a fun question, but we saw this in the direct as well. And if you don't want to answer it, I completely understand. But if I'm going to New Atlantis and they scan my ship and I do have contraband, what happens?
Yeah. You'll have to wait and see.
All right, looking forward to that.
I feel like that modular shipbuilding stuff is really cool. I can see people getting totally lost in that. And I'm right in thinking, and maybe this was addressed in the direct, I don't know, but like once you build your ship, you're designing kind of the internal layout of the ship that you'll walk around in as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, it comes with it. So you have these modules, and they come with the inner parts as well. And then when you click them together, and obviously you saw it, there are different modules for different things. So that gives the ships a really, really unique feel. And I'll say, when we designed the game originally, when you go into sci-fi, we sort of start with what kind of spacesuit do we want? What does that look like? What do the weapons look like? And it took us a long time on ships, because there's so many ships in games. And how do we do them where they look cool, but they feel believable, where you can draw the line from where we are today to these kind of ships, while also allowing the player to build them? So that actually, along with the planets, was a big challenge for us, and we all love where it's ended up.
That's great.
I have kind of a nerdy tech lore question. One of the things I love, because I love the nerdy science stuff, and I'm sure that Bethesda's got its own route into this as well. But like one of the things I loved about Mass Effect was they had really cool explanations for faster than light travel and even faster than light communication. Right, the mass relays would get you around, and the quantum communication would allow instantaneous communication over like the span of light years. I presume that Starfield has its own version of all that tech lore, right? This is how we're able to travel faster than light. This is how we're able to communicate faster than light.
Quite grounded.
Definitely. I mean, we say grav drive here, but it stands for the graviton loop field array, the way the different bands bend space in front of you, and the more it can bend it, and you're actually taking space and you're folding it, you're bringing the space towards you. There's some great papers out there on like warp drives and quantum physics.
I was going to say, this is not dissimilar to warp drive, right? Where you contract the space in front of you and expand the space behind you.
Technically, that's what it is. And we do get into, with the game, gravity and how that affects, people in this universe, how they bend it, how they feel about that.
Oh my god, that's huge. He was talking about, at the end of the Starfield trailer where we see him actually using some kind of gravity power right at the end that seems to affect everyone. So he's talking about gravity bending, kind of like earth bending from Avatar or air bending, gravity bending, and how people actually react to you doing that, because it's kind of like, if you're playing a Necromancer in the Elder Scrolls Online and you just start summoning dead in town, people are like, whoa, what are you doing? That's against the law.
And so forth. So we do a lot of interesting things there. But to your point, Gary, we did spend a lot of time originally. What is the fiction of this new universe that we're building? And how do we get from today to the tech level of this game and have that? It's still a video game, right? So I don't want to like overpromise or anything. But make that, for the reality of this game, feel believable.
Right.
I do want to say as well, on another point, obviously, like with Fallout 76 coming out, it was a really difficult launch. It didn't go very well, obviously. Todd Howard, in a few interviews a long time afterwards, said that he disappointed fans and that he was sorry about, what happened with that. Obviously, the game's completely changed now. But he just said there, he keeps saying it. He said it twice in the interview now. And I think intentionally, he doesn't want to overpromise it's a video game. And I think that partly that is because of what has happened previously when he's overpromised, and we'll all just hype things up, we're part of the problem. But he's kind of, he doesn't want to overpromise things. We saw it with No Man's Sky as well. Get excited about the game, but hey, it's like, here's what it is, here's what the gameplay is like. And I feel like that's why that 45-minute Starfield presentation was also so good, because it just showed you, this is the game. This is what the developers like to do in the game. Here are some of the mechanics and systems and how they work. And it was just like, that's it. It wasn't like this crazy, like, whoa, look at this, bro, everything's amazing. It was much more grounded, and it felt, that's what everyone, I think, after watching that, felt a lot more comfortable. They felt a lot more confident about the game and what it's going to be like. Obviously, it's not out yet, but do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that is an important takeaway, and I appreciate him saying stuff like this.
Todd, I want to stay on tech with you really quick, because I know you're a big tech guy, and of course, we see the Xbox Series X, and of course, PC's continuing to push the level of tech for game developers like yourself and the team. What are some of the benefits you've seen with the Creation Engine 2, maybe Dolby Atmos? Are there things that really stand out to you going, man, I love that we can utilize this, or I can't wait for the future to continue to push this?
Good question, because Elder Scrolls 6 is next.
We are just so happy with the new engine. It took us so long to do. Our tech team, they're wizards, led by Chris Rodriguez and Joel Denault. And what we're able to do in the game and have all these things looking amazing and running, from all of the items that we're simulating, and people, spaceships, full planets. Our lighting model is just awesome. The real-time GI. We didn't really show this off, but I'd love to in the future, which is we have some great volumetric fog and how that interacts with the lighting. Then you get into the physics and we start messing with gravity. It gets even crazier. Our quest system, I think people are, there are a lot of open world games now, but I think what really makes ours different is that all these quests are running. It's not like you start a mission and we shut everything down. You can be on dozens of these at once. And that creates a lot of chaos sometimes in our games. We're aware of that, but it also creates these magic moments that we just love. and our players love, and I think that's what's really, really special about it.
Well, Todd, that actually leads me into one question that I know the community has been asking a lot since the Xbox showcase. Fantastic interview you did with Ryan McCaffrey, and you did address why Starfield is 30 frames per second. Totally understand it, totally get it. Think Digital Foundry did a great job following that up. But my question to you is, was it ever under consideration to potentially do a performance mode that you would take away some of these features like you just talked about with the volumetric fog?
He's about to answer the question, but like he said in the other interview, it's just not something they think about.
We never looked at taking features away. Our focus is on delivering all of that. Obviously, we've seen all those comments. Digital Foundry, they do an incredible job. I don't think they know how everybody in the game industry watches every single one of their videos. They do a fantastic job. And ultimately, look, we boil it down to we wanted the consistency. Game is running great, but we don't want players to ever think about it. We have obviously seen other games that have performance modes, and we lean toward consistency overall, and we talk to our fans and hear that from everybody. So we're feeling really great. Game feels great in your hands, and I would say, look, developers know this, but there are things that you can do to make that look and feel great. Things like motion blur, how fast the game refreshes or reacts to a controller input, all of those things matter to something feeling great. And I can honestly say this is the best feeling game that we've had.
Awesome.
Awesome to hear.
I have a question, and this is mainly because it's been on my mind recently, because I'm like a lot of people, I'm playing a lot of Diablo 4. And I love Diablo 4, but it also reminds me a lot of what has become very kind of calcified and very familiar and gamey to me. We were just talking about this before the show. So Todd, I wanted to ask you like how you approach things like side quests and I don't know if you feel like it's necessary to trying.
Sorry, it's just a completely different game, bro. Like it's not even similar.
Try and break this cycle and get away from it. But for me, it starts to feel very old, where I walk into a village in Diablo or any one of these kind of games, and here's my side quest. Space bandits stole my trousers. Go kill 10 of these bandits. One of them will drop something. Bring it back to me and I'll give you a better hat. And
What he said just there is relevant, though, because one of the quests that we see in the Starfield Direct is like, hey, there's some local pests or creatures annoying me. I'll mark it on your map here. Go kill them. And that's the exact sort of like, they're not side quests like all the other Elder Scrolls or Fallout side quests that are actually like really, really interesting, if not more interesting than the main quest. And me, Camelworks, and co do like 40-minute lore videos about one side quest, like the Red Guard woman in Skyrim. Those are the real Bethesda side quests. But then you obviously have the Radiant quests, which is what this guy's talking about, which, yeah, Diablo's 4 quests are like this. It's quite an old school game design, really. But I don't want to get into that. But those like go and kill 10 rats quests are like the extra quests that the game engine just creates out of like a catalog to give you just to do something, to get experience or feel like you have an objective. Those are not really side quests.
Give you a better hat. And I just feel like I've been doing this same for like 30 years. And I'll still do it because that, push the button, get a pellet, dopamine hit still works. But no, I wish we could find a different side quest or dynamic or a different way that didn't feel so like gamey as that. And I don't know if there's a question you've asked yourself over the course of developing so many games or in this game, Todd. Like, do you get what I'm talking about when I feel like a lot of these quests feel like generic video game quests? And how do you...
Okay, so this is interesting because I think AI will change this. And I've done some videos about AI NPCs, though currently I think you would really need to rein them in a video game, because if you just let them go, kind of like Todd tried to do with Oblivion, NPCs would be killing each other for food, because it was one of their needs and it made sense, even though morally to us it wouldn't make sense.
How do you break out of that sameness?
Yeah, and to show how much I listen, I believe you mentioned that on an earlier podcast.
Yes, he's not.
Yes,
I told you Todd wasn't full of shit. He actually...
I think you said, I guarantee Starfield's going to have some of this.
Yeah, I mean, because it's hard to completely reinvent the wheel, but I don't know. I just feel like it always reminds me that I'm in a video game when someone tells me a story like that. Like somebody stole my pet cat, go find it, and I'll give you some space gold or a better pair of gloves or something. I don't know. It feels like we've just accepted that that's what side quests are now, and I wish there was a way to approach them differently. Is there anything in the side questing off of the main quest line in Starfield where I'm going to go, oh, that's a different way to do a side quest? That's cool.
When I was interviewing Ted Peterson, the creator of The Elder Scrolls, I'll link that interview down below. He was basically saying that there's only several ways you can write a story, and really they've all been done, and now we're just trying to come up with new ways to write that story. So it's all about the delivery and the journey of getting there.
Well, look, it comes down to making all of that content, and our folks have done an incredible job there, and there really is a lot of it. So we have a lot of specific quests, but it's not what you're talking about, the sort of random one-off ones. I don't think it's mutually exclusive. We obviously have a bunch of that.
Right.
You can land on a planet and go to an outpost, and we're going to generate a mission nearby, and you're going to see some of that. But I think that's okay if you know you're in for it. And those activities, if the gameplay is good, can be fun, but they shouldn't take the place of those more in-depth ones. And we've done a lot of those.
Right.
Yeah.
Todd, you talk about content. I'm going to...
Because obviously in Diablo 4, a lot of the side quests do boil down to that. There are some really good ones, though.
Start ramping us down. So guys over there, start thinking of your final questions for Todd. I want to be respectful of his time and get us out of here in a timely manner. But you talk about content, Todd, and of course, you and the team, and thinking about what you guys can create, but also there's the side of the mods. And, you know, your team at Bethesda have done a really great job with mods and allowing the community to create and build within your worlds. Have you seen something that stands out to you in previous games through the community where you go, man?
Oh, I thought he was going to ask about if they're going to have mods in Starfield and how they were going to do that and their plan for like Creation Club and these rumors about the marketplace that we've heard about.
And that team did a really great job. That is awesome on the mod side of things. And of course, moving forward, are you excited to put mods into this game with so many planets to explore and the opportunity to create?
Yeah, I think Starfield is going to be kind of a modder's paradise. It's part of our DNA here. We've been doing it for over 20 years. And our community around that, because look, we've usually been classically single player. That has been our community. And people are still modding our games and playing them. So we're doing a lot of it. And I think one of the things that I'll call out is it's important for us not just to enable that, but to participate, right? To make it easy for them, to make this where they can make it not just a hobby, but a career. We've had a lot of great success there. So
a lot of the people who are doing Fallout London actually got employed by Bethesda. Who knows what they're working on?
Looking forward to what everyone's going to do with Starfield. Just like cannot imagine.
That's awesome.
Same. I'm going to be very excited for that. Question I have as we wrap this up, there's 1,000 more I would love to ask, but we want to be respectful of your time. Outposts, you kind of slightly mentioned that a few minutes ago. But something I caught again during the rec towards the end was it sounds like there's going to be kind of an advanced feature with some of these outposts where you can actually leverage some of the plants and animals on the particular planet that you're on to generate resources, which then made me think about, well, if I land on a planet, am I limited in the resources that I can use to build an outpost? In other words, is there only so much I can do without, is it unlimited what I can do for an outpost is what I'm trying to say. Can I build whatever I want, or do I have to have a certain amount of resources to build whatever, design that I'm thinking of at that time?
Good question.
So outposts, kind of like I was talking about with shipbuilding, is a very deep system, and it does involve a lot of resources to really, do what you want to do. You can do all of that, so you can land on a planet and start building, but you're going to need to really go crazy. You're going to need to develop your character skills. You're going to have to collect those resources, but there is a ton there, and you can even actually somewhat connect them between planets, shuttling cargo between them. So it's a really cool system, but I will say again, like shipbuilding, one that has a lot of depth.
Obviously, if you could find the best planets for each resource and then set up a base on each one, have these systems or robots carting resources all to your central main base, you'd basically have an unlimited funnel into your main economy of building like just a ridiculous base. And that's what I'm going to do.
Not really meant as like an early player kind of system. It's meant to be one that you're going to play over a long period of time.
Well, that brings me to just a quick follow-up on that. So potentially can Outpost be an economy generator for you as well?
Yeah.
Yes, they can.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
Gary, what are final questions for Todd?
I always like to ask at least one question from the point of view of like a creator, because I create stuff and I'm always really neurotic about putting it out into the world. Are people going to like it? I just wanted to ask Todd, like, as we close in on the final months now, this game, going out into the world and it being a big moment of truth after all these, years of development. Like, where are you emotionally typically at this point, and where are you right now with this one? Like, is there a certain amount of confidence, like, we know we've got the goods and it's all going to be great, or is there always that little bit of imposter syndrome, neurosis, like, oh, you never know until it goes out into the world? Like, where are you on that spectrum?
I think we all
But,
have
you
that.
know, you've been through it, Gary. You have something. We've worked just so hard on it. I'll say again, the team here, many of us have done this for decades together in some cases, and we have put just everything that we think we've learned and maximum effort into this one. And look, we love it, and our fingers are crossed that everybody feels the way that we do about it. And we're just really kind of humbled by everybody's excitement for it, and it's fuel for us, you know, over these last few months to make it, you know, as good as it can be for everybody.
Do you feel any additional pressure given, I mean, obviously this is not even within your control, it's just kind of the way that the history of Xbox has worked out, that, you know, the vibes have been off with Xbox for a little bit, like, where are the games, or where are the big games? And Starfield has kind of emerged as just wait for Starfield, this is going to be, like, it kind of feels like, you know, like,
That's not really their fault, though. Like, I feel like there's been a lot of games that people have hyped up and they didn't really live up to the expectations. Now, Xbox have kind of kept Starfield on that. This is their golden goose that they really need to perform, and that really puts a lot of pressure on Bethesda, especially after they were just purchased by Xbox for a lot of money. This is going to be their first major game that Todd Studio, Bethesda Games Studios, which is a different group within the ZeniMax umbrella. They've just been working 8 years on Starfield. Obviously, we know Elder Scrolls 6 is in pre-production, so there is a team on that. And obviously now Elder Scrolls 6 has entered full production, considering Starfield's about to launch, and they have a smaller DLC team working on that. That's what they've always done with their previous games. So I get the pressure.
when they redid Star Wars, right? They paid $4 billion. I remember J.J. Abrams said this movie didn't cost $150 million. It cost $4 billion because that's what we paid for Star Wars. And this is the kind of thing where, like, if something that big, the stock price of the parent company moves on how these mega tentpole things are received. Do you feel like you're carrying like the weight of like Xbox on your shoulders right now when that's kind of the narrative that seems to be emerging? Like Starfield was going to be the standard bearer for Xbox this year?
I think I was feeling better before you asked that question. Look, we're focusing on what we can do, like I said, on this game. And I will say Xbox has been their support has been incredible on this, with Phil and Matt Booty and the team over there. And obviously we worked with them for a long time, going back 20 years at Morrowind. But being part of Xbox and their support has really, it has allowed us to be this ambitious and take these risks, and fingers crossed. That's
great. Paris, one more for you. I see you.
Sneaking it in. Two quick yes or no ones for you. Are there black holes in this game? And my dear friend Emily, she would kill me if I did not ask this. Can Vasco wear a hat like Mr. Handy did in Fallout 4?
I'm going to pass on the first question.
Interesting.
Can Vasco wear a hat? Not currently, but I'm sure that will be an early mod.
Yeah, I'm sure it will.
100%.
Todd, of course, I want to thank you for joining us today. I have two quick small ones for you. Have you ever wanted to do a smaller project? You and the team, Todd, have created these massive, incredible games. Have you ever thought about making a small game?
Like a little Pentiment kind of thing on the side? Yeah.
Oh, we have the mobile team. We did a Fallout Shelter, which I think is our most played game ever at this point. So we do some of that. We have some mobile stuff going too that looks really cool that we haven't talked about. So
I think this mobile game is Starfield themed. I wouldn't be surprised if it's some kind of FPS top-down spaceship management sort of game. Because they've done the Fallout Shelter game, they've done the Elder Scrolls Blades game. Come on. Like, Starfield's been in development for 8 years. They've not talked about this secret mobile game. I was expecting it to be revealed along with Starfield like they did with Fallout Shelter, but keen to know what it is.
We get to dabble in that, but at the end of the day, I as a player, I like the big worlds that I can get lost in. That's why, many of us here wanted to make games, and it's really, really rewarding for us, and just so thankful for the opportunity, and thankful to be here with you guys today.
Todd just hit the nail on the head, Danny. You'll have heard me say this on the podcast before, that my favorite kind of games are not me thinking about like a game that I'm going to go play, but like a place where I'm going to go and a world that I'm going to get lost in. Yes, Mass Effect was 100%. That for me.
Yeah,
Los Santos 100%. Was that for me. And that's why I'm excited about Starfield, is I want to just forget
That's Bethesda Games.
my real life. Not that my real life sucks, it's pretty good, but I just want to forget about it and go visit a million planets and hit space aliens on the head with a hammer.
Well, that is the perfect way to end this. Todd, thank you so much for your
Thank you,
time.
guys.
And
Thank
most
you, Todd.
importantly, thank you to you and your team for creating games that I love, that we love on this panel, and that the audience loves. That is a really special one that you guys get to do. So thank you for everything. We have a lot more.
The Star Trek.
We'll have fun.
There were some incredible questions on that interview, and I'm really glad that Todd Howard's doing these. You know, at this point, I just kind of want to play the game and get a feel for what it's like, and then tell you guys my feelings about it. But every time I watch these conversations and what's discussed, everything just feels very grounded, quite realistic that the game's going to be like that. Now, if you guys are interested about the Elder Scrolls 6 and Fallout 5 timeline, watch the IGN interview. I'll link it just over here. I've timestamped where those questions are, so you can just skip to them, but they're super interesting. Ryan does a great job interviewing Todd as well, so I highly suggest checking that out. I'll see you there.